Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. By the time you guys are seeing this, I am out of town on a trip with my band, actually. We're going to play at a not a music festival, I guess it's more like a camping festival, art festival, not really sure. But anyway, going out of town for the weekend, so I have gotten well ahead on content. I'm actually going to be gone quite a bit over the next few weeks, so I'm getting well ahead on content. I don't know if you guys would have noticed. I may have mentioned it in previous videos, but a lot of this has been pre-recorded, so yeah, today we're back with the High Elves versus the Dwarves. You may remember, oh gosh, it's been probably like a month by the time this is being released. I showed a video of battle of myself versus playing the Dwarves versus a High Elf player. And yeah, he ended up bringing, I think it got featured on Turn's channel as well. He ended up bringing two Lore Masters of Hoeth. I've brought a similar build, except I've got nobles instead. I've cut the Sword Masters for just regular spearmen and brought more archers. And we also have a single unit of Dragon Princes and some Illyrian Reavers as well. You can see the Reavers currently getting into the back line, shutting down this Goblobber here. For my opponent, he does have a nice gun line here. 4 Thunderers, very good. Where's the Dragonfire Pass? Dwarf Warriors, we've got some Longbeards as well, an Organ Gun, and a Cannon. But you can see here, he actually pulls back the Goblobber crew into a protected position. It looks like away from the light cavalry there. Pretty good play, but the main issue is the chariots, right? So the advantage of the chariots over, say, the Lore Masters is that they have the mass to plow through and disrupt formations. And you can see that's exactly what I'm doing here. They're just plowing through these groups of Thunders left and right, and they're going to be generating some great value, not only interrupting their fire, forcing them to continuously reform, but like if they come in, for example, just like that on a side charge, they can actually hit almost the entire unit when they're spread out in a big line like this. White lines will do quite well in the front line matched up against miners. The Spearmen will more or less just kind of hold the line. They have good enough melee defense to beat Miners, and Dwarf Warriors versus High Elf Spearmen, because they both have low melee attack and high melee defense, it's basically just a wet noodle contest. I mean, not to mention the Dwarfs have armor as well. They probably will win out in the long term, but that would take like an hour probably. So, yeah, you can see I've moved up. I was using the archers to go after the artillery crews. You can see they're all pretty much offline at this point. Looks like the Goblobber crew got caught up in combat here, but well, it looks like actually this organ gun is still online here, but yeah, because the High Elf archers have such long range, if your opponent is playing too close to their artillery, then you can get up, get within range, and use those archers to shut down the artillery crews as they don't have too much armor. My opponent did cut out a little bit early there, but I just wanted to sort of show this as a follow-up to that last video, that this is, I think, a little bit a better way to approach it. Granted, I don't think my opponent's build was necessarily quite as optimal as the one that I had brought in that previous one. But let's go ahead and look at the end screen real quick, just to recap a couple things. I didn't really show the Dragon Princes too much, but their whole thing is just to come in on the flank, find units that don't have charge defense, and even if they have good armor and good melee defense, if you can get them, I mean, like, if you can get Longbeards or even Slayers, like, in the back or the rear, where they don't get their charge defense, if they're unbraced, or, you know, hitting things like Thunderers, artillery crew, obviously, just in general, the high charge bonus of the Dragon Princes allows them to pretty effectively punch through armor reliably on the charge. You don't want to leave them in combat for too long necessarily, but even something like Slayers, because they don't have any armor and their melee defense isn't amazing, if you get a clean charge where they don't get their charge defense, they are just going to get absolutely clobbered by Dragon Princes. So having one unit to kind of keep in reserve and then bring in once you have your opponent's artillery tied down, once you're disrupting their missile units, you know, bring them in and kind of clean up routing units, you know, rear charge and so on, can be pretty effective. But let's go to another replay here, and it's going to be another Chariot versus Dwarf replay. This time it's Clan Angren with an Ethereal Engineer, which I actually have not seen in years, probably in a multiplayer battle, but super cool. We've also got a Rune Lord, 5 Dwarf Warriors, Miners with Blasting Charges, a unit of Slayers, a Regiment of Renown Ironbreakers here. We've got a couple Bugman's Rangers as well, another super cool unit, a couple Cannons, and the Ulthar's Raiders. We've also got, yeah, various units scattered around here. You can see they've got a nice tight deployment. We are on Marbad's Tomb, which is one of the best maps for rush factions, in my opinion, because it's so small and you start so close. I can immediately rush in with these units and start to get in this backline area here. My front line can move forward very, very quickly, so he's really not going to get a whole lot of value out of these cannons because of the tight quarters here, if I can get onto them, that is. There is some pretty heavy presence at the backline, and honestly, charging these Bugman's Rangers with the Marauder Horsemen isn't going to do a whole lot, especially if the Bugman's Rangers are, you know, facing them and braced, because they do have charge defense. The Ulthar's Raiders are also a bit of a danger. They do have decent combat stats. It's not amazing, but if they sunder the armor of, let's say, this Mammoth, I guess the Feral Mammoth doesn't have much armor anyway, so the Bugman's Rangers will actually be quite good there. But in the case of something like Famir, these guys could sunder the armor with their ability there, but you can see I do sneak through, manage to get on that cannon with these Marauder Horsemen here, just kind of, you know, sweeping around. Wulfric's going to come through and unleash a boat right across those Ulthar's Raiders, and because they are relatively lightly armored, it does a ton of damage, also cleaves through those Bugman's Rangers as well, and we're going to unleash a Flame Storm from the Fire Sorcerer. Of course, he is also on a chariot. We've got champions and marauders in the front line. The champions are actually out on the flanks, but yeah, that more or less just deleted one unit of Bugman's Rangers. I'm going to pull these champions back, hoping that the vortex will go off in the other direction, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. The chariots will ride through the fire and flames and charge into these Iron Breakers here. Because the Iron Breakers aren't braced, they don't get their charge defense. They do take a lot of impact damage here. You know, I say that. It actually wasn't a ton. And once the chariot models are stuck in these Iron Breakers, if they get surrounded, Iron Breakers are some of the heaviest infantry in the game, so it's very hard to pull out sometimes. But you can see over here the chariots of the two heroes, just, again, pulling around, getting caught up a little bit on those cannons, but just in general, again, the disruption of the dwarf lines is what we're looking for here. Just having all these missile units running around and not being effective, you know, being occupied by melee units, is what we want, even if our melee units aren't necessarily winning. Like, these Marauder Horsemen here are definitely going to lose this engagement. We just need to keep these Ulthar's Raiders tied down, because they can do an insane amount of missile damage. So yeah, just ping-ponging around with these chariots, hitting various targets. You can see the Ekron's Miners here take a pretty nasty charge. It'll be a brutal time for them. And yeah, the bounce power already starting to turn, as it's looking to be a pretty quick just wrap up here for Norsca. On this particular map, I might just go with like 3 Giant Slayers, the Dragonback Slayers, and just like a ton of Dwarf Warriors and Miners maybe, and some Rangers. I don't know. It's tough. This is potentially a really tough matchup for the Dwarves, in my view. There's definitely some things that you can do to make Norsca's life really hard, but Norsca definitely has good tools. They have some of the best chariots in the game. Wulfric is probably second only to like Cetra in terms of chariot lords. He is just absolutely amazing. I mean, the boat is such a good utility spell. He has the Hunter of Champions as well. He has super high mass, and his chariot does armor-piercing anti-infantry. You can just rack up a hilarious amount of kills. It's also quite fast. 78 speed is pretty good. And yeah, not to mention you've got the Chariot Sorcerer, who's going to lay down another Overcast Flamestorm here, just absolutely rip apart these Dwarven infantry. And yeah, I know I'm going to get many grudgings for this one, but this is just pure eye candy at this point, right? You've got Wulfric riding away in his chariot, the Mammoth, the Feral Mammoth fighting here with this giant column of flame, which of course will suck up some of these unfortunate Marauders as well. But hey, such is life in the service of the Dark Powers. You can see the Dwarves are trying to rally here. The Dramar Hammerfist here, the ethereal engineer, has been able to do some good damage. He does magic missile damage? No, only magic melee damage. Interesting. His missile attack is actually not magical. But this unit of Bugman's Rangers here has mostly been able to avoid combat, but now getting caught up by the chariot. Some Marauders going to follow up there. Honestly, they could probably beat those Marauders in melee combat with their regeneration. Bugman's Rangers are just a fantastic unit. And you know, in this matchup, going back to my previous point, for missile units, I actually think 2 Bugman's Rangers with the Ulthars is not a bad combo, because they're all relatively sturdy in melee. They can fight kind of low-tier chaff like Hounds and you know, even like Marauders relatively effectively. You know, you can use the Ulthar's Raiders' ability to tear the armor away from Famir. so, or you know, armored mammoths or whatever, so that the Bugman's Rangers will do more damage to them. I kind of just like the synergy overall there, but yeah, unfortunately didn't quite play out here. The Norgrumlings Ironbreakers, I kind of see what he was going for there, but at the same time they are very expensive, and I think in this matchup, I say it often, but elite halberds are the bane of Norsca, and for the Dawi that means giant slayers, right? They're your elite anti-large armor piercing option. And it helps that they're unbreakable. They don't have a lot of armor, but you don't really necessarily need that here. I mean, they will tear apart most Norscan units relatively effectively, as long as you don't get caught out by something like champions, I would think. Like sword and board champions might be a really bad matchup for giant slayers, but outside of that, I mean, you really can just clean up. I mean, then again, Wulfric's boat does do quite a bit of damage to the Slayers because they don't have any armor, whereas a typical elite halberd has quite a bit of armor, right? Like a Phoenix Guard or something. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit about this as the fight's cleaning up here. You can see the Rune Lord still fighting, using a Rune of Wrath and Ruin here on these champions. And the Manticore, didn't even mention, mostly because I forgot about it the entire battle, but the Manticore comes down with a surround, has enough weapon strength to get through the physical resistance here pretty effectively, do some good chunking damage to the engineer here, and although he looks awesome, he's not going to be able to win this fight here. The Rune Lord and the rest of the army shatter, and it's just going to be Mr. Hammerfist here. So yeah, two relatively quick games for the Dwarves, getting run over by chariots, which is pretty rough, but it probably came out about a week ago by the time this is coming out. I did release the video with the Gyro Bomber. In both of these matchups, I think a Gyro Bomber can be pretty good, although at the same time it can be pretty risky. With the High Elves, they do have decent, like, mid to long range, obviously, with their archers. They do have pretty good flying tools as well. Even just something as simple as, like, bringing Tempest with Alariel can shut down a Gyro Bomber pretty hard, so it may be pretty risky to try against the High Elves. Against Norsca, I think it's a little bit less risky just because the Manticore, I mean, if you play your cards right, it's going to be really hard for your opponent to catch your gyros, and you might be able to force the Manticore to the ground, potentially, and kill it with, like, some Slayers or something. The Ice Worm I've talked about previously is not really the greatest pick here because of its weakness to fire damage. So yeah, I honestly think a Gyro Bomber is the way to go here in this matchup. I do need to do a little bit more experimenting with it myself, but you guys saw that last video I released about it. It definitely would have come in handy for my opponent here, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. You guys might have noticed channel memberships are live on my channel, so if you want to support me and you know, help me upgrade and keep the channel going and take it to new heights, be sure to join as a member on YouTube. You do get access to some of the patron-only posts that I had been doing previously on Patreon. Those will go out to YouTube channel members as well. So be sure to check it out if that interests you. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.